Hope you've had a good Christmas break, and we're going to be moving forward talking about elections. And obviously, we were on this chapter before Christmas break occurred. We were talking about who comes out to vote and the likelihood that people would come out to vote, and the fact that people in America don't come out to vote. So we got to that, but we also want to talk about why people vote the way they do. And there are three main reasons or three main things that people will base their votes upon. And one thing that has become an issue again, or one way in which people base their vote, they go strictly based on party. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, many people will simply choose a candidate for an office because they represent the political party to which they're a member. Now, this used to be more popular back prior to the 1950s and even through the 1950s and up until the 1960s. You would have people engage in what's called straight ticket party voting. And straight ticket means you vote for all Democrats or you vote for all Republicans. Ultimately, it wasn't until later on that people started splitting their ticket. Remember, that's where you vote for some Democrats and some Republicans and maybe some independents. But party identification matters to individuals who are voting. Maybe you don't know everything you need to know about the candidates, or more commonly now, we're seeing that people will vote for a political candidate or not vote for a political candidate because they think the other party is evil. There are people, and I don't know how to get across to them that one group or has all the good people or all the bad people, but there are some individuals who legitimately think that all Democrats are bad or all Republicans are bad. And I don't think that's really a good way to vote, but that's becoming something that's a little more popular again. So party identification, this is my group, this is my tribe, this is who I'm going to vote for. Now, that's one way to base your vote when you go out to vote. Another more common way of doing this is voting on candidate appeal. Your image matters. And this is something we've alluded to in the past when we talk about politicians. And uh, let me show you an example of candidate appeal, what to do and what not to do. And please realize this voting for somebody based on candidate appeal is easy to do because we all focus on the way that somebody looks or the way that they appear. And here is a really great example of a person with candidate appeal. John Kennedy has candidate appeal. He looks the right way. He's very polished in the way that he speaks. I mean, who wouldn't want that hair? John Kennedy, men want to be like him and women just want him. I mean, it's a bizarre thing. Candidate appeal matters. And you don't necessarily have to be an attractive person, but remember, you got to put off that right vibe. It's not necessarily just about your looks, it's about how you present yourself. Do you walk with some confidence? Do you dress the right way? Do you have the right look? And something else you'll notice too, and we've talked about this, the further up you go in terms of political offices, the more important that your appearance is. So for president, you've got to look the right way. I mean, you represent the United States of America, so you have to have that look, so to speak. And that includes a lot of things. Like, for example, it hasn't been since William Howard Taft that we had a president with facial hair. I mean, no beards, no mustaches. It just doesn't work for the president. People don't do it. Maybe lower level offices, but uh, candidate appeal matters and the way you look, and people don't do facial hair. Right. Same thing with long hair. We don't have presidential candidates. If you're a man, you don't have long hair. It doesn't work. Other things that are important. Um, to an extent, we don't want presidents who are ridiculously out of shape. Okay, they have to be someone who doesn't look slovenly. It's well put together. And I mentioned this before, but when you watch the presidential debates this last year, when you're wearing clothes, you got to have the right suit color, the right tie color. There are image consultants who say this is what Americans expect, this is what they react well to, and this is what they don't react well to. Now, I want to show you an example of what candidate appeal doesn't look like. All right. And the picture I'm going to show you next, there's no way you're going to know who it is. In fact, I've been asking this question for since I've been teaching this class for almost 15 years, and nobody ever knows who this guy is. But he was a United States senator, and he was a presidential nominee for the Democratic Party. And yet people don't know him because he looks ridiculous. Look at this guy. I mean, tell me, would you vote for this guy for any office? Those glasses, that look, I mean, this guy is just basically saying 1980s high school principal. Look at him. I mean, it's just so sad. There's no image there. The first thing I would tell him, the glasses, we need better glasses. Also, get out in the sun, for crying out loud. And let's change up the suits as well. That's just terrible. Uh, but candidate appeal matters. The first thing we always notice about somebody is how they look. Now, you can vote for somebody based on party, but candidate appeal, it's a little bit more interesting that way. Let me give you an example of somebody who has evoked both of them. Let's go to 2008. Barack Obama. Look, when this picture hit the hit the news, people were like, "Oh my gosh, this is a 47-year-old Barack Obama who was on vacation with his family." And for a 47-year-old, it doesn't get much better than this. And people are like, wow, our president's actually in good physical shape, right? This helped Obama's image, his candidate appeal. And Obama helped himself out in a lot of other ways too. He went on ESPN and filled out an NCAA tournament bracket, which was something he continued to do. He was somebody that you're like, I can relate to this guy. He likes sports. He goes to the beach with his family. He's still in good shape, even though he's closing in on 50. Now, we mentioned this before too. Obama's candidate appeal or his image took a hit with the infamous tan suit controversy. And here he is with his tan suit, and the guy looks nice, but that didn't matter to his critics who suggested that a tan suit was way too casual for the office of the President of the United States. And believe me, he didn't make this mistake twice. All right. Now, let me show you another way in which candidate appeal mattered too. This is a political cartoon from the 2004 campaign election. It says, today's political question, who would you rather have a beer with? And you've got the stuffy looking John Kerry on the left, who that's actually a flattering picture. And then you got George W. Bush, who's two-fisting it there on the right. And notice the answer is, who the heck cares? We're picking a president, not a drinking buddy. And the point that this political cartoonist was getting across was, yeah, George Bush is probably a guy that's more likable, more more fun to be around, but that doesn't mean he's fit to be president. If you want to have a drink with George Bush and have a good time, that's great. But if you want a president with sound policy ideas, you should probably pick John Kerry, right? Fun fact though, George W. Bush wins that election, right? So you can vote on the basis of party identification and you can vote based on candidate appeal, okay? Or you can actually vote based on the issues and policies. When people get to this point where they're willing to vote based on the issues or the policies, there's a couple ways that you could go about this. But before we mention that, policy voting means actually doing research, actually looking up what candidates stand for and what they suggest. So you have to go online and you have to look and see what the candidates say. You have to research what it is that they're proposing and what other people say about their proposals. That's really hard to do because it requires time and effort and energy. And most people don't want to do that. I'll give you an example. My mom's not working anymore, but when she was working and there was an election coming up and I asked her if she was going to get out to vote and she said, absolutely. She really thinks voting is important. But I said, well, who are you going to vote for this office? And she's like, I don't know. And I said, well, take time and look it up. And she's like, look, when I get home from work, I fix something to eat for your dad and I. And He's doing something in the evening, and by the time we get done with all our work, we just want to sit down and watch TV for a little bit, and we don't want to spend our free time researching about political candidates. So, for a lot of people, it's hard to do policy voting. Now, when you do policy voting, there's two ways in which you could do it. One way is what we call retrospective issue voting. And this is when you look at what a candidate has done in the past. Right? Think retro, you're looking back. Right? Retrospective issue voting is when you look at what a candidate's done in the past. Have they followed through on their promises? Can they be trusted to carry out what they say they're going to do? And did those policies work? Right? That's retrospective issue voting, when you look back at what a candidate's promised to do. Now, you also look at prospective issue voting, and that's when you look at what a candidate promises to do for you in the future. Right? That's prospective or prospective issue voting. And you can do either one, whichever one you feel is ideal, but it's probably a little of both is a good idea. Okay? Now, out of voting based on party, candidate image, or appeal, and voting on the issues, which one do you think people do the most? All right, I can tell you this, it's not policy voting, because that's the hard one. Right? People will go based on the candidate appeal and candidate image better than anything else. Right? It's the easiest to do, because you're like, I just think that person's got a good vibe, or I like what they said right here, or they're a person who speaks their mind. Now, based on those, with that knowledge right there, what do you think campaigns for office focus on? Do you think they focus on their policies, focus on appealing to the candidate's image, or on party identification, or just simply saying we'll appeal to Republicans or we'll appeal only to Democrats? And the answer is, you already know it. They want to build up a good image of their own candidate and tear down the image of the opposing candidate. Now, I'm going to show you a couple videos that are actually embedded within this video, and you'll get a good sense of what it is that candidates are trying to do. And so let me preface these videos. The first one I'm going to show you is from 2004. All right. Howard Dean was the leading candidate among Democrats to get the Democratic Party's nomination in 2004. And Howard Dean, they had the first primary or caucus in Iowa, and Howard Dean did not perform as well as what he thought he was going to in Iowa. And he gives a speech at the end of the night talking about how he's going to rally everybody's support for the primaries moving ahead. And Howard Dean does something bizarre that absolutely crushes his chances at getting the Democratic nomination. And I'm going to show you that little video now. It's an older video, so it's a little bit grainy, but it's a piece run by Fox News, and you'll also see how this little event changes what happens, like how numerically, like in the polling, Howard Dean's going to drop dramatically. So let's go over to our good friend, the YouTube, and show you this Howard Dean piece.
Howard Dean's falling far and fast here, and he's got no one to blame but himself.
He's in some trouble here with Democratic primary voters. They're concerned about his behavior. He did it himself. They saw it. It's an emotional thing. It's a feeling thing. People see it, feel uncomfortable. That's very difficult to overcome.
Dean's now in a statistical tie with John Kerry, but the trends suggest he will soon fall behind. Dean suffered two setbacks in Iowa. The first, his disappointing third-place finish. The second, and far more damaging, was this.
We're going to South Carolina and Oklahoma and Arizona and North Dakota and New Mexico. We're going to California and Texas and New York. And we're going to South Dakota and Oregon and Washington and Michigan. And then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House. Yeah!
Before that defining moment, 57% of New Hampshire Democrats had a favorable impression of Dean, only 19% an unfavorable impression. But the day after Iowa, Dean's favorable number here dropped to 39%. His unfavorable number rose to 30%.
Now, I'm going to go back and show you that again, that little bit about the numbers here so you can see them on the screen. The infamous Howard Dean scream, where he just lets out that strange little rebel yell, and people thought that was unbelievably weird. And look at this, New Hampshire voters, January 16th to 19th, his favorable numbers went from 57% to 39%. Nothing else changes about the man other than that weird scream, and all of a sudden now people don't like him anymore. You do one weird thing running for office and people are not going to let you forget about it. His policies didn't change. The candidate didn't change. It's not like he had some radical haircut. Literally all he did was that strange scream. And if you think that Fox News was beating him up over this, this is not true. Every news outlet, most people in America were thinking, my gosh, this is absolutely bizarre. And he was even lucky. 2004, you didn't have Facebook or YouTube yet. So this is something that spread like wildfire all on its own, and every news outlet was playing the Howard Dean weirdo scream, right? Now, that one was Howard Dean's own doing, okay? And this next one, I got to show you this. There's a great website, by the way, and if you want to look at this on your own and you're kind of nerdy like me, you would go to livingroomcandidate.org. All right, and livingroomcandidate.org has all the major campaign presidential election ads from 1952 all the way through 2020. Now, the ad I'm going to show you now is what's called the infamous Willie Horton ad. And here is the background. Michael Dukakis was the Democrat running for office in 1988, and George H.W. Bush was the Republican candidate. And there are several things where Michael Dukakis kind of messed up and didn't really perform as well as he could have. But this ad right here is going to cause considerable damage. And in 1988, one of the big issues was capital punishment, okay? And capital punishment, whether the death penalty was viable or not. And Michael Dukakis had been the governor of Massachusetts. And in Massachusetts, I swear to you, I'm not making this up, they had a prison program that allowed for what's called a furlough, which was a weekend pass. So if you were a criminal and you had good behavior in prison, they would literally let you out for the weekend and you would have to come back, right? Now, does that seem strange in retrospect? Absolutely, okay? But let me show you this ad and you're going to think, oh my gosh, this is even more bizarre. So let's take a look at the infamous Willie Horton ad.
Bush and Dukakis on crime. Bush supports the death penalty for first-degree murderers. Dukakis not only opposes the death penalty, he allowed first-degree murderers to have weekend passes from prison. One was Willie Horton, who murdered a boy in a robbery, stabbing him 19 times. Despite a life sentence, Horton received 10 weekend passes from prison. Horton fled, kidnapped a young couple, stabbing the man and repeatedly raping his girlfriend. Weekend prison passes. Dukakis on crime.
Now, that right there was an ad that absolutely crushed Michael Dukakis. And here's the thing, part of it is true. Willie Horton was a violent criminal who was in prison for first-degree murder, and for whatever reason, prison officials gave him weekend passes. And he did violently rape and kill people while out on one of those weekend passes. Now, here's the part that they don't tell you. Michael Dukakis, even though he was a Democratic governor of Massachusetts, he was not the one who instituted this prison program. His predecessor, a Republican governor, is the one who created the weekend prison pass system. And so they made it sound like Michael Dukakis, if he was elected president, he would also, he'd make this a nationwide program, and this is how he's soft on crime. What else is important about this particular ad, too, is that Republicans were kind of preying on people's sense of racism at the time. Willie Horton is a scary-looking black man with a big, bushy beard and big hair. And later on, people who worked on this ad said they used that. And not only that, but you go back and part of what they show you here on the ad, they made sure to flash these words: kidnapping, stabbing, and raping. Right? And they make sure to show you the prison picture of Willie Horton as well. And not that Willie Horton was a good guy or anything, but they wanted you to say, look, this is a problem for America, and that's what Michael Dukakis stands for. And it's not what Michael Dukakis stands for. But in politics, you do what you have to do in order to get elected. And so campaigns focused on candidate image, and everybody learned a valuable lesson from this. Right? That's all we got for today, guys. We'll pick up with candidate appeal and how that affects people tomorrow. Voting decisions, good way to start back our new, not the new semester, but they're finishing off this semester. So hope your 2021 is going well so far.